The day my family threw me out, the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. I remember standing on the marble steps of the Ashford estate, a single suitcase clutched in my hand, watching the petals drift across the manicured lawn like pink snow. It was April, the month of renewal, and my parents had just renewed their family by erasing me from it. 23 years. 23 years I had been Alara Ashford, the cherished daughter of Richard and Celeste Ashford, the baby sister of Adrian Ashford, the heiress to a real estate empire worth $12 billion. 23 years of family dinners and birthday parties and bedtime stories, and 23 years of being loved. Or so I had believed. The truth came out on a Tuesday, delivered by a genetic testing company, and a tearful phone call from my mother. There had been a mix-up at the hospital, she said to mistake. The baby they brought home, me, was not their biological child. Their real daughter was a young woman named Sabine Moreau, who had grown up in a cramped apartment in Queens, the daughter of a single mother who had died of cancer when Sabine was 17. Sabine had taken a DNA test on a whim, hoping to learn more about her ancestry, and the database had flagged a match with my mother's sister. Within 72 hours, Sabine was standing in our living room. Within 96, my parents had made their choice. Alara, sweetheart, my mother said, her voice trembling with the effort of pretending this was difficult for her. We love you, we love you, but Sabine is our daughter, our real daughter. She's been deprived of her birthright for 23 years. She needs us. She needs her family, and you'll always be part of our lives. Just not like before. Not like before. I was being demoted from daughter to footnote, from heiress to houseguest, from sister to stranger. The room that had been mine since childhood was given to Sabine. The trust fund my parents had established for me was transferred to her name. The seat at the family dinner table, the invitation to the charity galas, the place in the family portrait, all of it went to Sabine. And I was given a suitcase, a check for $50,000, and a handshake from my father. We'll always be grateful for the memories, he said, as if I were a departing employee rather than the child he had raised. But blood is blood. I'm sure you understand. I understood that love for the Ashford family was a matter of biology. I understood that 23 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and graduation photos meant nothing compared to a double helix. I understood that I had never really been their daughter. I had just been a placeholder, keeping the seat warm for the real thing. What I didn't understand was my brother. Adrian Ashford was 29 years old, the CEO of Ashford Properties, and the most formidable person I had ever met. He was 7 years older than me, which meant he had been 7 when I was born. He had taught me to ride a bike. He had threatened my high school boyfriend with bodily harm if he broke my heart. He had danced with me at my debutante ball and told me I was the most beautiful girl in the room. He had been my protector, my champion, my rock. And when the truth came out, he didn't say a word. He stood in the corner of the living room while my parents handed me the check. He watched me pack my suitcase. He watched me walk down the marble steps into the cherry blossom spring, and he let me go. That was the part that broke me. Not my mother's performative tears, not my father's cold efficiency. Adrian. The brother who had promised, when I was 6 years old and terrified of thunderstorms, that he would always, always protect me. The brother who had called me his little star and meant it. The brother who had been my entire world, and who had just let me walk out of his without a fight. I didn't go far. Not at first. I rented a small apartment in Brooklyn with a $50,000, a fifth-floor walk-up with a leaky faucet, and a view of a brick wall. I spent the first month in a fog of grief and disbelief, waiting for a phone call that never came, and my mother didn't call, and my father didn't call. Adrian didn't call. I was erased. The second month, I got angry. The third month, I got busy. I had a degree in finance from Columbia, earned through my own hard work, not my family's connections, and I used it to start a small consulting firm. I worked 18-hour days. I built a client base from nothing that I proved to myself and to the world that I didn't need the Ashford name to succeed. The fourth month, I met someone. His name was Julian Cross, and he was the CEO of a boutique investment firm that had hired me to consult on a merger. He was 34, silver-haired, with the quiet intensity of someone who had built his empire from scratch. He was also, I would later learn, Sabine's former boyfriend, the man she had left when she discovered she was an Ashford heiress and decided she could do better. Julian never talked about Sabine, but he talked about business, about philosophy, about the books we had both read, and the places we both wanted to visit. He listened to me till he saw me. And when he proposed, 6 months after we met, he didn't ask me to be Mrs. Julian Cross. He asked me to be his partner, his equal, his co-founder in the life we would build together. I said yes. The engagement announcement ran in the New York Times. Not because I wanted it to. Julian's family was old money and the Cross family announcements were tradition, but because it did. My parents saw it. They saw my name. They saw my face. They saw the man standing beside me, the man their real daughter had discarded and I had claimed. The phone call came 3 days later, and my mother's voice, tearful and trembling. Alara, sweetheart, we need to see. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Your father and we made a mistake. Please, just come to dinner. Let us explain. I didn't want to go, but Julian, who knew more about my past than anyone, encouraged me. You've been carrying this weight for years, he said. Maybe it's time to put it down. And if they try to hurt you again, I'll be right there beside you. So I went. Julian came with me, his hand steady on the small of my back. We walked into the Ashford estate together. The same marble steps, the same cherry blossoms, the same gilded doors. And inside, my family was waiting. My mother burst into tears the moment she saw me, and father stood stiffly, his face unreadable. Sabine was there too. dressed in a designer gown that I recognized from my old closet, her expression a mask of polite hostility. And Adrian was standing by the window, his back to me, his shoulders tense. Elara. My mother rushed toward me, her arms outstretched. My baby, I'm so sorry. We were wrong. We were so wrong. I stepped back before she could touch me. You said you needed to explain. So, explain. My mother's face crumpled, but it was my father who spoke. Sabine has been difficult. She's not the daughter we expected. She's caused a great deal of disruption in our lives. And we've come to realize that blood isn't everything. You were our daughter for 23 years. You are our daughter, and we want you to come home. I almost laughed. Sabine had been difficult. Their real daughter had turned out to be a disappointment, and now they wanted their placeholder back. It was so transparent, so pathetic, that I didn't know whether to scream or weep. No, I said. My mother gasped. My father blinked. Sabine's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of something that looked almost like relief. No, my father repeated. Elara, we're offering you your place back. Your inheritance. Your legacy. You're offering me a consolation prize because the real thing didn't work out. I'm not interested. I've built my own life. I have my own company. I have my own fiancé. I don't need your money or your name. Sabine stepped forward. I knew it. I told them you wouldn't come back. She's too proud, Mother. She always thought she was better than us. Better than you? I turned to face her. Sabine, I don't think I'm better than you did. I don't think about you at all. You took my room and my trust fund and my place at the dinner table. You didn't take my life. Did I build that myself? She recoiled as if I had slapped her. But before she could respond, Adrian finally turned from the window. He looked terrible. His eyes were hollow, his face gaunt, his suit hanging off his frame as if he had lost 20 pounds since I'd last seen him. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in months. He looked like a man who had been drowning. Elara, he said, his voice rough and broken. Please, don't go. I can't lose you again. Again? The word came out sharper than I intended. Adrian, you didn't lose me. You let me go. Did I waited for you? Did I waited for you to call, to text, to do anything for months? I waited, and you didn't. You stood there in this living room and watched them throw me out, and you didn't say a word. You didn't fight for me. You didn't protect me. You broke every promise you ever made. I know. His voice cracked. I know. And I have regretted it every single day since. He walked toward me, his steps unsteady, and before I could stop him, he fell to his knees. The room went silent. M.Y. Mother gasped. M.Y. Father stared. Sabine's mouth fell open. Adrian Ashford, the CEO of a $12 billion empire, the most powerful man in any room he entered, was on his knees in front of me, tears streaming down his face. I was a coward, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I was a coward, and I was wrong. When they told me you weren't my biological sister, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that nothing had changed, but they made it seem like you had deceived us, like you had known all along. I let them poison me against you, and by the time I realized the truth, you were gone and I didn't know how to reach you, and I didn't know if you would ever forgive me. But I can't spend the rest of my life without my little star. Please, Elara, please come home. I'll do anything, I'll give you anything. Just please don't leave me again. I stared at him, the MY brother, the MY protector, the man who taught me to ride a bike and threatened my boyfriends and danced with me at my debutante ball. He was on his knees, begging for my forgiveness. And despite everything, despite the months of silence and the years of pain, I felt my heart crack open. You hurt me, I said, my voice trembling. More than anyone else, more than them. I gestured toward my parents, who were watching with expressions of stunned disbelief. They were never really my parents, did I know that now, but you were my brother. You were supposed to love me no matter what, and you let them convince you I was a stranger. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you let me. There was a long silence. Julian's hand found mine, squeezing gently. I looked down at Adrian, at the man who had been my entire world for 23 years, and I made a choice. You can start, I said quietly, by standing up. The CEO of Ashford Properties shouldn't be on his knees. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. He rose to his feet, unsteady, and I let him pull me into a hug. His arms wrapped around me, fierce and desperate, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had come home. But not to them, not to my parents, who were still standing frozen by the fireplace, their expressions unreadable, not to Sabine, who was staring at us with a mixture of fury and envy, home to Adrian. My brother and my family, the only one who had ever truly mattered. Third-party objective commentary. The structural genius of this scene lies in its complete inversion of the traditional family reunion trope. In conventional real daughter returns narratives, the biological child is celebrated and the adopted child is either villainized or pitted. Here, the author weaponizes the trope against itself. The biological daughter turns out to be a disappointment not because she is inherently flawed, but because the parent's transactional view of family, where love is a function of genetic proximity, has created a household where no one can truly belong. Sabine is as much a victim of this worldview as Elara, though she processes her victimhood through entitlement rather than grief. Adrian's confession is the emotional fulcrum of the piece, and it works because the author has carefully structured his silence as a betrayal more profound than the parent's rejection. The parent's love was always conditional. Elara understood this on some level even before the revelation. But Adrian's love was supposed to be unconditional, and his failure to speak was therefore the greater wound. His collapse on his knees is not merely a dramatic gesture, it is a public abdication of the very power structure that enabled Alara's expulsion. By kneeling to his sister, he symbolically rejects the hierarchy his parents established, where genetic legitimacy determines worth. The detail of Julian Cross, Sabine's discarded boyfriend, is a particularly elegant piece of narrative symmetry. Sabine abandoned Julian when she ascended to wealth, only to watch Alara claim him when Alara had nothing. It is a quiet reminder that Alara's value was never in her name or her inheritance, it was in her character. The man Sabine discarded became the man who stood beside Alara, and in doing so, became the living proof of what the Ashfords had thrown away. The wedding was held 6 months later, in the garden of the Ashford estate. Julian and I were married under an arch of white roses, surrounded by cherry blossoms and the quiet hum of a string quartet. Adrian walked me down the aisle. NY parents were seated in the back row, not because I had forgiven them, but because Adrian had begged me to let them attend. They're still our parents, he had said, even if they don't deserve the title. Sabine was not invited. She had moved to Los Angeles 3 months after the dinner, taking the remainder of her trust fund and the last of my parents' goodwill with her. The last I heard, she was trying to launch a career as an influencer, her Instagram full of posed photos and hollow smiles. I wished her well, from a distance. She had been as much a victim of the Ashfords' transactional love as I had. She had just processed it differently. Julian and I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn, not far from the walk-up where I had spent my months of exile. I kept my consulting firm, which had grown into one of the most respected boutique finance shops in the city. I kept my name, Alara Vance, the middle name my grandmother had given me, the one I had reclaimed when I realized I didn't need the Ashford name to be whole. And I kept my brother. Adrian came over for dinner every Sunday. He played with our children, a daughter named Eleanor, a son named Gabriel, and taught them to ride bikes the way he had taught me. He was their favorite uncle, their protector, their champion. And every time I saw him with them, I remembered the day he fell to his knees in front of me, and I forgave him all over again. Some families are born, some are made, and some are rebuilt, brick by painstaking brick, from the wreckage of what came before. The Ashford family that exists today is not the one I grew up in. It is smaller, quieter, and far from perfect, but it is mine. The daughter they threw away became the woman who chose her own family. And she never, ever let anyone choose for her again.